Hello.
Hello, everybody. Welcome.
Hi, Gracie.
Hi, Gabe. Good to
Gracie.
see you. Hi, Derek. Nice to meet you.
One day we will meet.
We are waiting on 2 more people to come to class, but I like to start class by doing some introductions. So I thought we could go around and just say our names and where we are in this country or world. And for today, how about our favorite dumpling? Favorite kind of dumpling currently. Doesn't have to be of all time. Don't stress yourself out too much about it. But yeah, I'm Gracie. I'm here in Eugene, Oregon, and my favorite dumpling is currently a Georgian dumpling called a kinkali, which I just learned about this like 2 months ago. I started making them, and they're kind of meat and broth filled dumplings that are kind of big and filling, and I just can't stop making them and eating them. I'm really excited about them. How about you, Emily?
Hi, all. This is Emily. I am in Eugene, Oregon, and I was just asking my husband, I'm like, which one's my favorite pork dumpling? It's whatever's in the hot chili oil from the Thai place that I go to that I could eat by the pound.
Thai dumplings and chili oil. That sounds amazing. Wait, what Thai place? Can we rewind that real quick? Which one?
My favorite's up in Portland, Bamboo House.
Okay, good to know. Gabe and Derek.
Hello, my name is Gabe.
I'm Derek.
And we are in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And let's see, my favorite dumpling, I think I really like just like chicken gyoza or pot stickers. That's my go-to. We used to when we'd go to Tennessee and visit my aunt. My other aunt is Japanese and Filipino, and she would come and help us make like 150 of them to freeze and just have there. So that's good memories there.
Ooh, I want to learn that.
Mine is probably my mom's chicken and dumplings, just like the flour dumplings that she'd make.
I am happy for you. My mom is like a really bad cook and like deeply traumatized me with chicken and dumplings. Like, I don't know how she did what she did, but like inside the dumplings in the chicken was like powder. Like, I don't even know how she did it. But I haven't eaten chicken and dumplings since then, so I think I should probably revisit it.
I'll have my mom make you some.
Okay, that would be really nice. Ken and Chris.
Hi. I don't know who he is, but anyway. I like pot stickers with hot like chili oil and stuff. They're really good. Even the frozen one you get at Costco can be good.
Yeah, I like anyone that's made for me and put on the plate.
Nice. Well, today you get to make and put them on the plate.
Good.
Right.
I like the hat, Ken. Looking sharp.
I'm here for the show.
Yes, great. Melissa.
I also am a fan of pot stickers, and anytime I'm at a Chinese restaurant, I'll just order anything that I haven't had before. I just like to try them all. And I also really like to make ravioli, and I don't know if those count as dumplings.
Oh, 100%. Those are dumplings.
Yeah, I like ravioli.
Nice. Do you have a favorite filling?
No. Yeah, I like, greens and cheese, or like caramelized squash of some kind, or I need to up my meat ravioli game.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you have some experience. That'll be helpful for you today. Are you in Eugene?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, welcome. Hi, Kathleen.
Hi, I'm Kathleen. I'm in North Carolina. And you might see I'm at my parents', so my dad, Bob, might walk in the frame. He's going to be my sous chef today.
Nice.
Or he says he's my dishwasher, actually. So
even better.
Better than a sous chef. And I love all dumplings. I like Asian style dumplings. I think my favorite to get when I go out are soup dumplings, because I never want to make them at home. I've never tried, but it just seems like a lot of work and mental effort. So yeah.
Yeah, I have done some research on making soup dumplings and I have not attempted to yet. The Georgian ones that I've been making are really easy. You just put a little broth into the meat filling, and as they boil, they create like a soup inside the dumpling. But the Chinese ones, they make like an aspic and set it, and it's quite complex. I agree. I love to get those. And Crystal, welcome. We're all just going around and sharing our name, where we are, and then our favorite kind of dumpling.
Okay, I'm Crystal. I'm in Eugene, and yeah, pretty much all the Asian dumplings. I grew up in like Chinatown of Dallas, Texas, and so we had dim sum a ton, and like the bao buns and the dumplings and the soup dumplings and the pot sticker, everything. Oh,
Yeah, I think China probably wins the dumpling award of the world. But we're going to travel tonight to Eastern Europe to make some pierogi. And I'm really excited. This is a dumpling that's very near and dear to me and my cultural background. And it's pretty easy. And what we're going to make tonight is like a very classic. We're going to do a potato and dill one, which is like a very classic filling. And then one that I really like, which is squash and caraway. Does everybody have their squash in the oven or out of the oven and cooked? Did everybody cook their squash? Great. So the way the class is going to work is that we're still missing one person. I'm just going to send them a quick email because I always want to make sure people got the Zoom link and that they're not feeling left out in some way or reaching out to me. But I'm going to be cooking, and as we cook, I'll be telling you what we're doing. You cook along with me, and I'll check in throughout the course of the class and say, how's it going? You'll be muted, and you can give me a thumbs up if you're cooking right along with me, a thumb sideways if you're kind of a little bit behind, but I can keep going. You can multitask, and a thumbs down if you need me to slow down. At any point, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask me a question. And I just like to keep everyone muted so you can hear me really well. I'm going to spotlight my video so you can see me nice and big here. But if you prefer to look into everybody else's kitchen, you just go to the top right corner, the view button, and click on gallery, and then you'll be able to peek in at everybody while they cook. And I'll keep you all in gallery so I can look at all of your faces. And we'll just get started. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get a pot, and we're going to put a cup of water into that pot.
What size pot?
I'm using like you could use a 1 or 2 quart size. It doesn't have to be too big, not a huge pot.
Just for the potatoes?
No, this is going to be how our dough starts.
Okay.
So 1 cup of cold water. And once we have that water in there, we're going to put 4 tablespoons of unsalted butter. And I like to just cut it into 4 pieces, just going by the little notches on the butter stick, so that it melts a little quicker once we put it on the stove.
Just 1 stick.
So 4 tablespoons unsalted butter. And I'm just cutting it into 4 pats and putting it right into the water.
4 tablespoons, half a cube.
So right now we've got 1 cup of water and 4 tablespoons of butter in a pot. And the last thing that's going to go into this pot is going to be 2 teaspoons of salt. Two teaspoons. I'm using just a diamond kosher salt. If you have a finer sea salt, do a little less than 2 teaspoons, like maybe 1.5 teaspoons. If you're using kosher salt, that 2 teaspoons is just right. So in a pot, 1 cup water, 4 tablespoons unsalted butter, 2 teaspoons of salt. Give me a thumbs up when you've got it. Excellent. Okay, that's going to go on the stove, and we're going to bring it to a boil. Now, a mistake that I've made in my pierogi making days, my early pierogi making days, was to walk away from the stove. If you walk away from the stove and the water comes to a boil and it boils and boils, it's evaporating. And that means you're losing moisture, which means your dough is going to be crumbly and not as silky and luxurious to work with. So we're going to do the really boring thing of just standing over our pot of water and watching it boil. And as soon as it comes to a boil, we're going to put 1 cup of flour into the pot. I see you, Ken. I see your sideways thumb. That's totally fine. If you have a question, just unmute yourself.
You said just 1 cup of the flour?
Yeah, so once it comes to a boil, we're going to put in 1 cup of the flour.
Okay.
So,
How much sugar? Oh, excuse me.
what?
How much butter?
4 tablespoons.
Is that a stick?
No, it's half of a stick.
Half
Half
a
of a
stick
stick. Okay, got it.
for the amateurs.
Oh, no worries. So once the water comes to a boil, we're going to put in the cup of flour. We're going to take it off of the heat and stir it up really well. So we're just going to hang out. You can measure out your cup of flour.
Are we going to use the whisk to stir it or just like a wooden spoon?
I'm going to use a wooden spoon. It'll get too clumpy with a whisk. So I would recommend using a wooden spoon. And I'm just using a white all-purpose flour, 1 cup. Now, I've seen a lot of different pierogi recipes in my days. This one came from a friend's grandmother. It was written on a piece of paper. And it's the only one I've seen that cooks that heats up the water like this. And what that does, whenever you add boiling water into a dough, is it expedites the gluten formation in the dough. So what you're going to find is our dough is going to be really soft and luxurious. And I've used a similar technique when making dough for Chinese dumplings of using boiling water in the dough. And you just end up with a stretchier, more flexible dough. So I've tried some other dumpling dough recipes for pierogies, and this one is definitely my favorite one. I think it works really well. So just keep a close eye on that pot of water. Watch that butter melt away. And then, yeah, once it's boiling, we'll add in our first cup of flour, stir it, and take it off of the heat.
How stirred is stirred once it boils? Like,
So
just like it's mixed, or do you want it to be really well?
you want it to be fully incorporated so there's no just dry flour hanging out, and it should look like kind of like mashed potatoes. The consistency should look like mashed potatoes.
Okay. None of the powder like your mom's chicken and dumpling.
So my butter's starting to melt. My water's not quite boiling yet. I have an electric stove that's kind of slow to heat up. So if you get ahead of me, good for you.
Gracie, if it boils and the butter's not melted, do we still mix in the flour?
Stir it up, get that butter melted.
Okay.
Yeah, you definitely want the butter to be melted. But you could still take it off the heat because the residual heat in the water should be able to melt the butter without evaporating too much more of the water. But you do need to see it boil. All right, mine's coming to a boil right now. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. Take it off the heat. Add in my cup of flour. Stir it up really well. And yeah, it should look like, I'll show you guys what my dough looks like after I'm done with my stirring. I want to get all that flour incorporated. I don't want to see any powdery white flour. So this is what it's looking like. This is the texture, sort of mashed potato texture. How's everybody doing? How's it looking? All right, we got some sideways thumbs. We got some thumbs up. Good. Looking good, Ken. Looks perfect. So once it's all stirred up and you have all that flour incorporated, we're just gonna set it aside, and we don't wanna leave it on the hot burner. It should be off the heat. You can turn your stove off. And I'll just give you guys all a second there to catch up. Grab a drink of water. The next thing we're going to be doing once your dough is stirred and it's set aside is we're going to get a small bowl and we're going to crack an egg into it and whisk it up. So this dough, it's going to rest for a little while and cool down. And then we'll be adding in a little bit, not yet, we'll be adding in our egg and another cup of flour. But not right now, not yet. We want it to cool down. Otherwise, the heat from that water is going to scramble the egg. We're just whisking it up really well.
Gracie, we had a double yolk. Is that a problem?
No, not a problem. It's like a bonus.
It's a bonus, and
That's good luck. Yeah, I find that based on like where you are, what the humidity is, what the temperature is, your dough might be a little soft or a little dry. And when we start kneading it, you'll be able to incorporate water by getting your hands wet. Or if it's sticky at all, you'll be able to just knead a little flour into it. So Ken, the extra yolk might make yours slightly sticky, but that can be easily amended with a little bit of flour when we get to the kneading part. Once we have our egg whisked, you can measure out another cup of flour. Get that ready. What kind of wine are you drinking, Derek?
A very affordable wine that I got in a box. Well, not a box wine, but a box shipment of wine. There's this company that was doing like a really good sale that we got in like a coupon that we got in a Bed Bath & Beyond box. So this is
Nice.
yeah, it was like something ridiculous, like 8 wines for $50 or something crazy.
All right, I love it.
It's very much cooking wine, is what I said.
Awesome. So while our dough cools off a little bit, we're just going to get our potatoes out and we're going to peel them. And I recommend using russets or Yukon Gold potatoes. But basically the filling is really simple. We're just more or less making mashed potatoes. And I add mustard into mine. It's something you do not have to do if you don't love mustard, but I've found that it adds like a really nice tanginess to the pierogi because it's all very buttery and rich, and the mustard kind of cuts through it a little bit. Once I started doing it, I started always adding mustard to my mashed potatoes, but I'm also just like a mustard fiend. So you'll see though, if you're second guessing it, I might change your mind. But if you hate mustard, then don't add it in. So we're just gonna peel our potatoes. You should have about 1 pound of potatoes. And then we want to chop them into about, I don't know, about 1 inch chunks. You don't have to get too crazy or measure it. We just want them to cook kind of quickly. So I'll show you. I'm just like gonna cut it into something that looks about like this. And those can go in a pot.
So Gracie,
Yeah.
I started cooking the potatoes, but I didn't cook them all the way with peel on. I didn't read that part that we're supposed to do that ahead of time. So I'm boiling the potatoes now. I guess I should cut them in smaller pieces.
Don't worry about it. If you got a head start on it, you'll probably be right in the same place as we are. If your peels are on your potatoes, that's not a big deal. They'll be really easy to get off once they're cooked.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
keep cooking it until it's fork tender.
Were we weren't supposed to cook them ahead of time, were we?
No,
Okay.
but if you did, that's fine. Yeah. So once the potatoes are chopped, we're just gonna cover them with water. I'm just using cold water. Fully submerge them. And then I'm gonna turn the heat on high there to bring it up to a boil, and I'm gonna add a really generous pinch of salt to the water. If you're a measure, it's close to a tablespoon of salt, but I just kind of give it a big giant pinch of salt. So you guys just give me a thumbs up when your potatoes are on the stove and looking good.
I always vastly overestimate how much I'm going to need. Like, I probably bought 3 pounds of potatoes for this.
I understand.
Dial it back.
Yeah, I've done that. I definitely do that. I'm super Jewish. I never think there's going to be enough food for anyone. I'm always overbuying food. After a lot of experience making these pierogies, I know for a fact that we're going to have leftover potato filling because I always make too much anyway. So, I like to use the leftover potato filling. It's like a dill mustardy potato. So I like to use it. I pan fry it as like a breakfast pancake in a little patty with lox or eggs or something. Is really good. All right, well, it looks like everybody's got their potatoes on the stove. So we're ready to finish up our pierogi dough. So go ahead and grab the pot with your dough. And we're gonna add the egg and the remaining 1 cup of flour into there. And we're just gonna stir it with our spoon until we can't stir it anymore. So it'll be weird and clumpy at first. But just use that wooden spoon to stir it up as best as you can. Get everything mixed together. And when you feel like you can't really stir it anymore, then we're going to transfer it onto our cutting boards, or if you have a clean, smooth work surface. And we're going to start kneading it. And it's warm. It should be warm to the touch, but hopefully it doesn't burn your hands. It shouldn't be too hot. It should have cooled down a little bit. So I'll show you what mine's looking. I'm about to transfer it onto the cutting board. So I've got a little bit of loose flour still that's not incorporated. That's fine. And it's starting to get really clumpy.
Gracie, you added the egg and then the 1 cup of flour to the dough?
Yes, exactly.
Can we use our hands?
Yeah, so once you've mixed it about as much as you can with the spoon, you're gonna transfer it onto your cutting board or clean work surface and make sure to really get all the flour and bits and pieces off that pot. And then we're gonna use our hands to bring it together into a ball. And we're gonna be kneading it for about 2 minutes. It's not too much kneading. It's a very tender dough. So it's a little warm to the touch, but I'm just using my hands to kind of gather it together, and I'm going to start kneading it. And like I said, if it's sticky, you can sprinkle a little more flour over it. And if it's a little dry or crumbly, then just get your hands wet and knead it with wet hands, and it should start to come together into a really nice, smooth ball of dough. I really love working with this dough. I love that it's warm to the touch and that it's so soft. Might be maybe my all-time favorite dough to work with.
Can you over knead it?
If you knead it for like 10 minutes, it'll be a little bit harder to roll out. The gluten that you've formed will make it harder. It'll kind of bounce back when we try and roll it out thin. So I really think 2 or 3 minutes is the sweet spot. But we're going to use this dough in about, 45 minutes. We'll roll out our pierogi. And if you want to do these again another time, you can make the dough ahead of time. You can make it a day or 2 before you roll it out and just keep it in your fridge. So I'll show you what mine's looking like. I feel like I'm getting close to done here. It's not sticking to my hands at all. The butter in it helps it not stick. And this is what it looks like right now. So it's kind of smooth on the top and really soft to the touch. Everybody's looks just like mine, which is great. All the ones I can see. So I'm just going to knead it for a little extra 30-second boost. Looks beautiful. Just give it another extra 30 seconds of kneading. And then I'm going to saran wrap it and set it aside. I'm not going to put it in the fridge. I'm just going to leave it out for now.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there are really any good alternatives to saran wrap for stuff like this.
Oh,
like,
totally.
Okay. Like,
yeah, you can use like a plastic bag that is left over from like produce or groceries, or if you use like, there's like beeswax paper that I buy to like seal things, you could wrap it in that too. You just want to make sure it's pretty tightly sealed, because if it gets air on it, it's going to get dry and crusty and it's going to be a lot harder to work with.
Is the warmth not a problem for the bees wrap? Because I'm usually pretty careful with my bees wrap to not put warm things in it.
This dough isn't all that hot, really.
Okay.
It's only slightly warm. I haven't had any problem with it. But I usually use a leftover plastic bag from the grocery store or saran wrap. But I am grateful to have you guys reminding me that it's better to not buy brand new plastic. All right, I'm feeling really good about my dough. It's really soft. It's lovely. Looks like this. Looks like all of your doughs. So I'm just going to wrap it up and set it aside. And then we're just going to take a minute to tidy up. You can do a couple dishes. Keep an eye on your potatoes. If they've come to a boil, you can turn them down to a simmer and set a timer for about 5 minutes. It should only take about that long before they're good to go. Tender. Yeah, I'm just gonna wash a few dishes. I always like to tidy up as I go so that we don't have a big mess to clean up at the end of the class. haven't made pierogies in a while. I started making them last year and it has become my most popular cooking class. I feel like people just really love this one. I think because it's, you know, it's something a little more adventurous than what most people take on in their kitchen alone, but it's also super accessible. And one thing I really love about it is how affordable it is to make, how sort of easy the ingredients are to acquire. It's nothing that special in it, but it's so good. And I've done a lot of different seasonal pierogi classes as well. So I do one in the springtime. I've done one in the summer. In the spring, we made a fresh sort of farmer's cheese and spring pea pierogi with mint in it. In the summer, we did a cherry pierogies, sweet ones, little ones that you serve with a dollop of sour cream and fresh basil. That one I got inspired by Kachka in Portland because they make cherry pelmeni, which are a Russian hexagonal dumpling. But yeah, once you get the hang of the dough, you can really take it in whatever direction you want to go in and fill them with whatever you want. Some of the most traditional fillings are like cabbage and cheese, mushrooms, caramelized leek, meat. You can make meat pierogi.
Is this a Hungarian recipe or Hungarian? Somebody asked me and I was like, I don't know. I'm just cooking.
This one is a Polish recipe.
Polish, okay.
Yeah. But they eat pierogi, and sometimes they call them, they have slightly different names in different countries, but similar dumplings all over Eastern Europe. So I'm just peeking in at my potatoes. They're not boiling yet. But once you're tidied up, we can go ahead and grab our squash and make our squash filling.
Gracie, if the potatoes are boiling, what do you want us to do? Just simmer?
Yeah, turn them down to a simmer and set a timer for about 5 minutes. And after that, you just want to test them with a fork and poke them with a fork. And as soon as they're nice and tender and easy to puncture, we're just going to strain them, pour the water off. But let's make this squash filling. So you're going to want to get a bowl. And in that bowl, we're going to scoop our squash into it. Don't want any of the skin. And you're also going to add in, there should have been a little shallot and garlic that you roasted inside that little crevice in your squash. And we want to put those in the filling too, because they have so much flavor. The soft garlic and shallot. So I'm just putting the squash, the inside of the squash, the shallots and the garlic. If your squash at this point is cold, you're going to want to melt 2 tablespoons of butter. If your squash is warm, you can just put the butter in, it'll melt on its own. But if it's cold, if the squash is cold now, you're going to want to melt 2 tablespoons of butter. And you can do that on your stovetop. You can do it in your microwave. You can do it in your oven, whatever way you like. With the molten heat of your passion for pierogies, you can melt your butter. But we want about 1 cup of squash, all told. If you have a little more, a little less, no big deal. Just winter squash season just started here in Eugene. I just saw the first delicata squash at the Saturday market this week. I am so excited about fall starting. I might be a little preemptive in this class, doing this class right now. It's maybe still summer, but I'm just so ready. So just a little recap. In this bowl, we have our roasted squash, we have our shallots and garlic that roasted with the squash, and 2 tablespoons of butter And if the squash is hot, we're just going right into the squash with room temperature butter. And if it is cold, you're going to melt the 2 tablespoons of butter, which is a 1/4 stick of butter. And then we're just going to mash it up. Mash up that garlic. The shallots won't become fully mashed, but they'll kind of break up into little pieces of petals of shallots. That'll be throughout the pierogies. I'm going to mash it up and then give it a taste. See what the salt level is like. Adjust the salt to your taste buds. You want to season it well. It should not be bland. You can add a little pepper too if you like pepper. My potatoes just came to a boil. I'm just turning them down, setting a timer for 5 minutes. I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of more salt in my squash filling. A little bit of pepper. Where'd she go? And the last thing that's going to go into our squash filling is caraway seeds. Yes. Melissa.
I thought I had caraway seeds and I don't.
Okay.
Is there anything like what would you suggest I use instead? Because I feel like I have pretty much everything, but I don't have that anymore.
Well, so caraway is a super traditional Eastern European spice. Something that would be a little less traditional but delicious is maybe a little coriander. I think that'd be really good.
Got that?
Yeah. So yeah, the last thing that's going to go in is the caraway seeds. So before you put your caraway seeds in, I want you to eat a caraway seed as is. And if the texture of it is too tough, if you don't like the texture, you might want to grind up your caraway a little bit, or you can crush them with the bottom of a mug or something. I like the crunch of the caraway seed. We're just putting a tablespoon of the caraway seeds into the filling. But feel free to grind it up if you have a spice grinder and you don't like that texture. Or like I said, you can just put it on a cutting board and use the bottom of a mug to sort of crush them up a little bit.
You said a tablespoon of caraway seeds?
Mm-hmm. Yum. That's tasting pretty good to me. So yeah, once your filling is tasting delicious to you, you can just set it aside. Anybody have any concerns or questions about the squash filling? Anybody wish theirs tasted differently or want to add something else to it?
I missed how you said to break up the caraway seeds if they're too chewy.
If they're too chewy, you can just use a spice grinder, or you can just put them on your cutting board, and I'll use like just the bottom of a mug to kind of crush them up a little bit. just like a little rough crush. You can test your potatoes. Go ahead and poke them with a fork and see if they're tender yet. If the fork goes in easily out of them, then you can go ahead and drain them. If your potatoes are not quite there yet, mine are not there yet, we're just going to be chopping up our dill next. When you're ready, we're just going to finely chop up our dill. You want to save a little bit of dill for garnishing the pierogi when we're done with them. So just set aside a few sprigs for garnishing. And then ideally we have about a half a cup of finely chopped dill. That was my timer for my potatoes. They're not quite there yet. They're not quite tender enough yet.
Hey, Gracie, unfortunately, we were busy with the potatoes. And we didn't get to think about the dill.
Oh, that's okay. You can chop it up now.
Okay.
That's all we
How
gotta do.
much?
Okay.
You want about a half cup of chopped dill?
Okay. And is dill and fennel greens similar?
They are similar but different. Do you guys
Okay.
have fennel greens?
No, I bought dill,
Okay, good. Yeah.
but I do have fennel also.
Dill is much more traditional. Fennel greens are delicious, and I think they would be really good in this, but slightly less traditional.
Okay.
We had to go to the store because Boondogs didn't have any.
Didn't have any dill? That's shocking to me. They almost always have dill.
I could only get flowering dill and I had to get like 8 bunches of it to get enough.
Oh my God. So we're just finely chopping it up. You want about a half cup of the finely chopped dill. And we're just going to set that aside. That will go into our potato filling. And hopefully set a few sprigs of dill aside for garnishing our finished pierogi.
Gracie.
Uh-huh.
So even with the like 8 bunches of flowering dill, I probably only have like 2 tablespoons. Can I supplement with dried?
Yeah, you can. Yeah, what I would do is start when we mash the potatoes, start with the fresh, mix it in and taste it. And if you want more dill in your filling, you can do some dry dill.
Okay.
No harm in adding a little dried dill to it. Dried dill is like my dad's all-time favorite spice. He like puts it on everything where it's like very inappropriate. I feel like I'm just really talking shit on my parents right now. They're amazing parents. They're just not incredible at cooking. No, they're getting a lot better. They're great. I love my parents. So let's keep.
I don't even know what you could add dried dill to that would be appropriate. So besides this, of course.
Yeah, he would put it on. He was really into mixing. Like he doesn't have a lot of context around like what flavors go together traditionally. So like there's a lot of soy sauce with dried dill in my family. A lot of like in like a stir fry or on salmon. Yeah, you know, I don't hate it. I just think it's weird. He makes this tuna noodle casserole that has like a can of Campbell's cream of mushroom soup in it. And tuna and macaroni, and then you bake it with cheese on top, and then you crush Lay's potato chips and like covers the top in dried dill. Like it's green, but it's kind of delicious actually.
Western, that sounds very
Yeah, he's from the Midwest. So once our potatoes are tender, I think mine just got there, we're gonna strain them and we're gonna mash them with 4 tablespoons of butter. So that's a half stick. You don't have to use 4 tablespoons if you are feeling butter shy, because there's more butter happening later on in the class as well. So you can use less butter if you want, but I tend to use more in general. So we're gonna strain the potatoes and mash them with 4 tablespoons of butter. And that dill that you just chopped up. Excuse me. Butter and dill. And then, yeah, if you're with me on this mustard thing, you're going to add in 2 tablespoons of mustard as well.
What kind of mustard do you generally use? Do you use like a Dijon or a whole ground? Like
I love a stone ground for this. Ideally, stone ground I think is the best. But I also use Dijon sometimes, and it's awesome.
And you put in a tablespoon, you said?
I put in 2 tablespoons. Maybe just start with 1 and see what you think. Taste it. And if you like what the mustard is doing, you can go ahead and add another tablespoon. And if you're like, whoa, lady, you're nuts, you cannot add mustard at all, or just add 1 tablespoon. I got my potatoes all mashed up. I'm adding my dill, adding my mustard. And then, yeah, you want to taste it. Once again, just go with your own personal palate and adjust the levels of salt and pepper to your liking. It's okay if the potatoes, there's a little bit of chunkiness in there. They don't have to be super finely mashed. At least I like it that way. I like to have a little bit of texture. And once it's starting to taste delicious to you, you can just set it aside. Love that mustard, not gonna lie.
It is delicious. Is it okay if it's a little bit dry?
Yeah. You can always add more butter, or you can add a splash of cream if you want. But it's going to go inside the dumpling that is also going to be fried in butter that is going to be served with sour cream. So it's okay if it's a little bit dry. Right, feeling good about my potato filling, feeling good about my squash filling. How's everybody doing? Great, great. I'm gonna set our fillings aside. And when you're done with your fillings, you can put your mustard away. Mustard. I could just eat it straight out of the jar.
I have a question about the sour cream.
Yeah.
Do we want it to be cold and stay in the fridge right now, or should we take it out so it starts like getting softer?
I personally like it cold because the dumplings are hot and it's like a nice counterpoint that also helps you eat the dumplings more quickly. But if you like room temperature, that's totally up to you. But yeah, I like them cold. I like them cold, the sour cream. So our next step here is going to be to caramelize our onions. This is very traditional to serve pierogies with caramelized onions. So when your fillings are done and set aside, you can just clean up your work surface a little bit. And we're just going to be slicing our onions, which should be peeled already. We should have 2 large yellow onions. And I'll show you how I like to slice them. Mostly I slice them pretty thin. But the more important than having them be super thin is having them be consistent. So, because we want them to cook at about the same rate. So I'll bring you guys in a little bit closer here. You can see. So I cut it in half, cut off the top and bottom, and then I'm just slicing kind of thin, maybe 1/4 inch slices of the onion. And we're going to do that with all of our onions. It's a lot of onions, but it cooks down so much.
If this was chopped, I'd be disqualified. I just cut my finger, so give me a second.
Oh no.
It's all right.
It happens. It does happen. So once you have your onions all sliced up, we're going to be heating up a large pan. Now, you want to use either cast iron or a non-stick pan. The bigger, the better. We're going to heat it up on a high heat. Emily, you got help now? Good.
Getting a glove.
Good. Don't worry. We're not in a rush. We're doing really good on time. We're just, the only thing you missed is I had people grab a large pan, cast iron or non-stick pan, and we're going to heat it up on high heat. High heat.
Okay.
Bring you over to this side of my kitchen here.
Oh, here, I can do it.
So I either have gigantic but not non-stick, or sort of tiny and non-stick, which is better.
Gigantic.
Excellent.
Yeah, because if you have more surface area, the onions are going to caramelize a lot more quickly. So I'm just heating my pan up, and once it's hot, I'm going to put in 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And why I mix them is because butter, when heated up on a really high heat, will burn, and olive oil, when heated up on a really high heat, will become bitter. But when you combine them together, they become this magical super fat that is indestructible, and you get the incredible flavor of both the olive oil and the butter in the onions. So once our pan is nice and hot, we're going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter and and this could be the unsalted butter. 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And as soon as the butter starts to sizzle, you're gonna add the onions in. Excuse me. So a lot of people, when they think of caramelizing onions, they think it takes a really, really long time and you do it really slowly on a low heat. And I tried that one time at a restaurant I worked at, and the woman who I worked for, she threw my onions in the garbage. And she said that this is the way to caramelize onions. Hot and fast is the only way to create true caramelization of the sugars in the onions. So I've never done it any other way since. I'm not going to tell you that any other way is wrong. I'm just going to tell you that this way is quick. So hot sizzling pan with the butter and the olive oil in it, and then in go the onions, the sliced onions, and they should sizzle.
I never cut myself free. It's annoying.
And then we're just going to be hanging out here and stirring these onions. You can kind of leave them alone when you first put them in, leave them alone for a minute or so. And what we want to see is steam coming off of the onions. You want to see the water cooking out of them, and they're going to caramelize and cook way, way down. Do not add salt. Do not add salt. Salt breaks down the cell membranes of any vegetable or anything really. And it's going to pull the water out and it'll lose its shape. They'll get mushy. And if you wait until the very end to salt them, they'll keep a nice shape and they won't turn to mush. So we're just going to be here caramelizing onions for a little bit. It might take us about 10 minutes. I'm going to use this opportunity to tell you guys that I'm doing a little raffle right now. I'm raffling off a private virtual cooking class to raise money for the National Abortion Fund, the National Fund for Abortions. So if you would like to enter that raffle, private cooking classes are in this format, virtual, but you can invite anyone you want anywhere in the country and we can cook whatever you want. So we'll do a phone consultation. We'll come up with a menu that's exciting for you. And all you have to do is donate $10. Each $10 donation is one raffle ticket. I'll put the link in our chat box just in case you feel inspired. But I'm just trying to use this platform to do something helpful. It's easy to get discouraged right now.
I love that. Thank you for doing that.
Heck yeah.
When does the raffle end, Gracie? Like when is entry closed?
Friday night. So tomorrow night. I've already raised $300, so I'm pretty excited. Oh yeah, and then once you donate, you just send a screenshot of your donation to my email, which you should all have now, and that will enter you to win. And you can share, if you want to share the fundraiser, go for it. So my onions, what we're looking for here, we want to see them really start to get soft. We're looking for them to turn golden brown in color. So depending on the heat of your stove, that could happen sooner than mine. But if you see that they're burning at all, then turn your heat down a little bit. If you see that they look dry at all, you can add in a little more butter or olive oil, whichever one is your favorite. But the important thing is just keep stirring them, move them around your pan until they start to really cook way down and get soft and turn golden brown in color. And they should be sizzling away.
We weren't supposed to use the garlic yet, right?
The garlic was with the squash. The garlic got cooked in your squash, it should have.
Oh, I think I just had extra. Okay.
Okay, if you have extra, you can finely chop it up. And once the onions start to cook way down and turn golden, you can add it into the onions. It'll be delicious.
Nice. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you just don't want to add it too soon or it'll burn.
What's your
also
dog's
have
name?
I also have garlic because I put 1 clove of garlic in each squash half. So I've got 2 cloves left. So I'm also going to stick it in with the onions.
Perfect. Yeah, just finely chop it up and then it can just go in as soon as the onions start to turn golden.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what was your dog's name? I saw him or her.
His name is Luigi. Luigi. He's a very good boy. Come here.
Oh,
Yep, he cleans the floor. Yes, he's very handsome. Very nice.
What a good boy.
Yes, he guards the house. He's good at snuggling. He just turned 7 years old. He's my best friend. So I'm seeing that my pan is starting to look a little bit dry, so I'm just going to add in a touch more oil. But my onions are starting to get translucent. They're starting to get soft. And I'm starting to see a little bit of browning happening, just a little bit.
Gracie,
Yeah.
how can chefs be so heavy? This is a lot of work, man.
What's a lot of work?
I say, how can these chefs be so heavy? This is a lot of work.
Because they eat just as much as they cook. Well, I don't know if
A lot of calories.
I certainly do. I think I don't know. I don't usually trust a super skinny chef. I feel like you gotta enjoy. Gotta at least try everything that you cook at least once.
I don't trust Giada De Laurentiis.
You're like, what are you really doing? What's going on here? She's so cute.
She is adorable.
But I'm more of an Ina Garden gal myself.
well, with all this butter, for sure you are.
So I'm starting to get kind of a pale brown color on my onions, like maybe the color of graham crackers, but I want to see them go darker. Once again, if it looks dry, add fat. If they start to burn, turn the heat down a little bit. Has anybody in this class have any good pierogi memories, or has anybody ever eaten or made pierogi before? Feel free to unmute and share.
I've never made them, but I've certainly eaten them quite a few times. We had a really good Russian restaurant in Tucson, Arizona that made really good pierogies.
Oh, really? What's it called?
Oh, something Nina's. I don't remember the first word, but I'd have to look it up.
Okay, let me know, because
Ginger.
like half of my family lives in Tucson.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You know, we have a friend named Mark Zukowski, and he puts together a very ethnic meal once a year. And they're all very good. Pierogies and the whole 9 yards. Zukowski. You should be able to do a good job, right?
Nice.
We have yet to have any, but Pittsburgh, from what we've heard, has a very is like very well known for pierogies. That was kind of part of the reason that we chose to do this class of all of your classes.
I thought you were going to say that was part of the reason you chose to move to Pittsburgh.
But maybe it was part of our decision. But yeah, so we figured this would be a good class to kick off our Pittsburgh experience with.
Oh my God, I love that. Why did you move to Pittsburgh, Gabe?
Garrett's going to grad school here. He's doing an MFA program in creative nonfiction writing.
Awesome.
Yeah. So we are living it up in PA now.
Well, your kitchen looks cute.
It's cute. It's very small.
Yeah.
It's very, very much a galley kitchen. So we're making it work. I cleaned like everything out of the kitchen before this because I was like,
I'm glad. I'm glad you're here. It's so nice to see you. So my onions are starting to get kind of close. They're really soft and they're starting to be nice and golden brown. I'm going to say they need about another 2 minutes or so, and I can show you guys what they look like. So they're getting golden brown, but they're still kind of pale. So I'm going to take it a little further.
Is this the point we should add the garlic if we think we have about 2 minutes left?
Yeah. If you have garlic, now is a great time to add it in. Make sure that your pan has enough moisture that it's not too dry. If you need to add a little more oil or butter, don't be shy. And then once you see that they're nice and cooked down and they're a nice brown color, you can sprinkle in a little bit of salt and turn the heat down. My first pierogi was, I only started eating them, even though I'm Polish and Lithuanian, which are both countries that eat pierogi. I did not grow up with them, sadly. Grew up with tuna noodle casserole instead. So my first pierogi, I only ate it about 2 years ago. My friend Carly, her family is Czech, and they make pierogies. As a family every holiday, and I got to go to their house and eat them with them, and I was blown away. And so she taught me her recipe from her family, which is very good. But then I was cooking for this woman, I was a private chef for this woman, and she her grandmother had written her pierogi recipe down on a piece of paper, and she'd asked me to make it for her. And that's this recipe that we're making now. Only that recipe calls for a butter bath. It calls for bathing the finished pierogies in a bath of melted butter, which we are not going to do today. So if you thought that I was heavy-handed with the butter, I am not the worst of the group. All right, I'm about ready to turn my heat off on my onions. They're nice and cooked down and golden brown. I'm gonna give them a sprinkle of salt. How's everybody's onions looking? Great, okay, we're almost there.
So Gracie, we just turn the heat down. We don't turn it off.
We are gonna turn it off. Yeah, once you feel like they're nice and caramelized and done, you can turn them off. Or if your stove goes to like a very, very low heat, you can keep them warm. I don't really mind them being room temperature when I eat them. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn my stove off fully. So my onions have cooked down. They're probably about half the volume that they were when they went into the pan. And they're all soft and beautiful. I'm gonna go turn my stove off completely. Show you guys what they look like. Nice and caramely. And once you've got your stove off on the onions, we're gonna start to get our pot of water. That's gonna be the pot that we boil our pierogi in. We wanna get that out and get it onto a medium heat. We don't need to blast it. It should be a nice large pot.
How much water should we put in it, Gracie?
About 2 quarts, at least. I'm filling my pot up 3/4 of the way full.
Gracie,
Yeah,
what would be the best pan for this next stage? A wide one or a saucepan?
the deeper one.
The deep one, okay, got it.
You know, also, Gracie, it says here that while the pierogies are chilling, then you caramelize the onions.
Yeah, well, that is not what we're doing, Ken.
That's right.
I'm a jump ahead of you? Okay, well, we're caramelizing onions, so.
We're doing them ahead of time because I found that this to be the most efficient way. Sometimes I go
Right.
off the book. I hope you'll forgive me.
You're forgiven.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna put a pot of water on with a lid. We want it on like a medium heat, like a 5 or a 6. And then we get to start rolling out the most fun part of the whole class, which is rolling and forming our pierogi. So there's a couple things we need to do before we start rolling out pierogi. You want to make sure that you have a nice clean work surface. The bigger, the better. So a countertop will work unless it has tile. Otherwise, a cutting board is great. We're going to need a sheet tray in our freezer. And that is because while the pierogi need to rest in the freezer for about 10 minutes before we boil them. It just helps them seal, I've found. It helps them not split open when we put them in the boiling water. So get a sheet tray and just dust it with flour, just white flour. This is just so the pierogi don't stick to the bottom of the sheet tray. And then make sure that it'll fit in your freezer.
Is Gracie, if we have one of those like silicone like mat things on the sheet tray, does that work or should we do flour instead?
Do a little flour on top of the silicone, just a little bit.
Okay.
Probably won't stick, but it's good to have security. Okay, so once we've got that sheet tray in our freezer and our pot on the stove and a nice big clean work surface to work with, you're just going to need a few more tools that will be essential in your pierogi rolling process. You're going to want a little container of flour for dusting. You're going to want a tiny little bowl of water. A fork, and a rolling pin. The last thing you'll need is something to punch out the circles of the pierogi. My favorite thing to use is actually just the top of the sour cream, or if you have a yogurt container, just the regular plastic lid. This guy I find to be the best size for pierogi. If you want to make smaller ones, you can use the lid of a ball jar. But I like this shape. A biscuit cutter is great. Looks good, Crystal. You could use I don't think that's going to work, Ken, because the handle is going to make an indent on the dough of that. Yes, perfect. Great. So when you're ready, when you've got the water, the fork, the rolling pin, the flour, something to punch out the circle, we're going to dust our nice work surface with flour. Lightly dust it with flour. We're going to grab that dough. And we're going to unwrap it and cut it in half. We're going to roll out 1/2 at a time. So I'm going to cut it in half, and I'm going to put the half that I'm not using back into the plastic. So that it doesn't dry out. Set that aside. And then you can watch me here first if you want. So I got my half of dough. I'm just going to dust it on all sides with flour. Mine's a little bit tacky now. It's a little sticky, and I don't want it to stick to my work surface. So I'm making sure that there's a good amount of flour on both sides. And I'm just going to press it out a little bit with my hands, and then I just use my rolling pin, and I turn it pretty regularly just to make sure it's not sticking. And as soon as it starts to stick to the rolling pin, you can just sprinkle in a little more flour. Sometimes I like to flip it over after I sprinkle the flour on it. And we're just rolling it out almost as thin as you can get it. You don't want to be able to see through it, but you want it to be nice and thin. And it should roll out pretty easily. It's a very soft, fun dough. So I just make sure to keep moving it so that it doesn't stick to the bottom at all. If it seems like it's sticking, just add more flour. And as even as possible, as even as you can. Okay. So mine looks to be about maybe 2 foot by 1 foot. It's a blob. 2 foot by 1 foot blob. And once you've got it nice and thin, I'll try and pick this up to show you. You don't have to pick it up. I just want you guys to sort of see how thin it is, how big it is. We're gonna start punching out our circles. So you just grab that lid, that yogurt lid you have, and you're just gonna work your way around to get as many circles as you can. And don't worry, the scraps are reusable. So I just punch down and then I give the dough a little twist to make sure it punches out the circle. And I work my way around the perimeter. I usually get about 8 on my first one. Maybe 9, maybe, we'll see. I think I'm going to be good solid at 8. Yeah, I got 8. And then we'll just gather whatever scrap is left up into a ball, and you can just add it to the other half of the dough that you haven't rolled out yet. This dough does not mind being rolled out again and again. You guys give me a thumbs up once the first round of dough, you've punched out all the circles. Looking good. Great. Okay, so I'll pull you in even closer just so you can see how I do this. This is the final step here for forming these guys. I'm gonna grab a spoon and I'm gonna start with my squash filling. So all eyes on the screen so you can see how it's done. I'm going to take a little scoop of my filling. It's probably about 2 tablespoons. You can start with less filling until you get the hang of making the pierogi, and then you can try filling them more. So I'm going to put a little filling, and it's not in the center of the pierogi. It's sort of off to one side here, as you can see. And then I fold it over and use my fingers to press down, trying to get all the air out of there to make a little half moon. If the pierogi is not sealing just by your pressing, then you're going to use your finger to dip it in the water and just put a little bit of water, just a tiny bit around the edge of the pierogi. So after I've pressed it closed like this, it looks like this. I like to pat the top a little bit so it's flat because we're going to fry it in a pan. And I want to get a nice crispy surface contact there with the bottom and the top of the pierogi. And then the final step is to use our fork to just sort of press down on the edges and crimp them so that it stays closed. So the finished pierogi looks like this. And once I've finished it, it's going to go right into the freezer on that sheet tray. Now, when you get on a roll with the pierogi, when you're in the pierogi zone, you can go, this is what I like to do. I like to fill them all first. I like to go around and scoop the filling on first. And then I'll go seal, 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 and then I'll do the fork, fork, fork. You don't want to get any filling on the edge of the pierogi because then it won't seal. So just be careful with your placement of the filling.
I think mine are a lot smaller. Is that going to be a problem at all?
No, just don't overfill them. It's totally fine. Smaller is great. means you get to eat more of them. If my fork is kind of sticking to the dough when I crimp it, I'll just dip it in a little bit of flour. Don't forget to give them a little pat on the top to make them flat. How's it going, guys? How's this forming going? I think this is the fun part. This is the fun part for me, at least. You all look incredibly focused. So one great thing about pierogi is that they freeze incredibly well. So my friend Yana, she grows a ton of potatoes and she's like, how am I going to preserve these potatoes? And what she ended up doing was making a ton of potato pierogi and freezing them, and a ton of potato gnocchi and freezing them. And then she got to eat that all year long and give them to people as gifts and feed them to her guests when they come for dinner. But pierogi last a very long time in the freezer, and they're almost better from frozen. They just hold their shape a little better when they've been frozen for a long time. So the trick is that once they're frozen solid on the sheet tray, if you're going to keep them in the freezer, just transfer them to a bag or a sealed container as soon as they're frozen solid.
If you poke a hole in one of your pierogies, is there a way to mend it?
You know what? I haven't explored that really.
I'll let you know.
Yeah, let me know. You can try and patch it up with a little bit of dough. I've never tried to do that before. Sometimes mine explode when I'm boiling them a little bit. I'll lose some filling and I still just fry them and eat them, and they're just like a little uglier. And I just make them mine as opposed to what I would serve to a friend or something.
You're not alone. I'm trying a patch right now as well.
So on the next round, when we roll out dough, try to roll it a little less thin. Just go a little bit thicker on the dough when you roll it out into a sheet. All right, I finished my first round. So I'm going to start to roll out my second round of dough. This is a really fun project to do with kids too. I love making pierogi with kids. Fun to do around the holidays. It's a fun thing to do with your leftovers, like leftover mashed potatoes or roasted yams or greens. Like Thanksgiving leftovers are really good in pierogi. Okay, just gonna dust my surface with flour and go again. Now, if you are tired or if you're like, I just want to eat these, I don't want to make any more, you could wrap your dough up and it'll be easy to roll out more pierogi tomorrow or the next day. I would say the dough has a shelf life in the fridge of about 3 days. and you can roll them out then and fill them. For one thing, yeah, you either want to roll them and form them all tonight and freeze them, or just refrigerate the filling and the dough separately and form them on a different day. But I don't know.
Are we filling all of them with the squash, nothing with the potatoes?
I just filled my first round with all squash, and I'm going to do my second round with the potato.
Okay, got it.
And hopefully you have just about the right amount of filling. Usually I end up with about 20 pierogi, and I would say a serving size is between 3 and 4 pierogi, depending on how hungry you are.
Gracie, should we put these straight on the freezer sheet when we have them all cinched and everything?
Yes.
Thank you.
Seems like everybody is just quietly working away on their pierogi, which is great.
When do we use the caramelized onions?
They're going to be served with the finished pierogi.
Okay.
They're a garnish. And your second sheet should be bigger than your first one because you added in that scrap dough. And the sheet from the leftover scraps from the second round you can use to even roll out more pierogi if you want. I usually end up with one sort of weird big pierogi at the end that I don't even punch the circle out of it. It's just a weird shape, and it's the one that I get to eat. Right, I think I'm gonna get 10 out of this second sheet. And if your water is starting to boil for the pierogi, you can cook some. You can cook them now, or you can wait until you're done forming them all. It depends on how good you are at multitasking. So if you want to just focus on the forming of the pierogi first, that's what I'm going to do, I think. But if you want to start, does anybody feel like they want to start cooking the pierogi? Are they really hungry? Okay, it looks like we're all on the same page here. We're just gonna form them for now. All right, I'm going in with the potato filling next. Same technique. I really love the sweetness of the winter squash with the tanginess of the sour cream. It is really good. And these ones I think I used a little more flour when I was rolling out my second round. So I'm going to use a little bit of water when I seal them this time. My dog is just very patiently sitting below me right now, seeing if I drop anything. It's pretty relaxing, at least for me. I think this is relaxing. I like doing stuff like this with my hands. It's very meditative. I can't wait to hear from you, Gabe, what kinds of pierogies you eat in Pittsburgh and how they compare to these ones.
I will definitely give you a text message to let you know.
Okay, good. How are your pierogies forming?
These are the ones we get at the store. These were traditional sauerkraut that admittedly were not that good. But they at the Pittsburgh Pirate games, they have the Mr. T's pierogies like in like mascot uniforms come out and race. There's like 10 of them or something.
Whoa, are you serious?
These are big in
Yeah,
Pittsburgh.
it's like a big.
I knew, wow, I didn't know it was that serious there.
Go figure. That's why we have to do this class.
Yeah, it all makes sense now. Wow, pierogies, people dressed in pierogi outfits. That's next level. All right, I'm finishing up my potato round. I'm going to do my third after I get these all fork sealed. And then I'm going to show you guys how to cook them. Yep, excuse me. Transfer some of these to the freezer. I don't think I've ever even seen frozen pierogi in the grocery store. Okay, my water is boiling now. So I'm going to talk to you guys. I'm going to walk you through the cooking process. Two-step process here. After I seal up these last 2 pierogi. Lovely, lovely. So how do you know when the pierogi is ready to go in the boiling water? It should, the edges of the pierogi should be really firm in the freezer. So it shouldn't flop when you pick it up. It should hold its shape and be nice and firm. So my first ones that I did are nice and firm now. Look like this. I'm just going to turn the camera so you can see the cooking process, but no rush. If you're still diligently forming your pierogi, you can just sort of listen in. So my water is boiling here, which is what you want. You want a nice boil. You never want to put pierogi into a hot water that isn't boiling. Should be boiling. And before I put the pierogi into the water, I'm going to start warming up a frying pan. So this is the important part. You don't want to cook more pierogis in the water than you have room for in your frying pan, if that makes sense. So my frying pan, I know, can only fit 4 pierogi in it. So I'm just going to boil 4 pierogi at a time. So I'm going to turn my frying pan up on a high heat. Medium high, not like blazing hot like the onions. And while it's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and salt my water. You want to be very generous with the salt in the water. Similar amount as we put in the potatoes. And I'm going to go ahead and put 4 pierogi into the boiling water. Now, the pierogi should cook in the boiling water for about 2 minutes, but I usually judge them by how they float. Usually when they float to the surface of the water, it means they're done boiling. And that's when I use a slotted spoon or spatula to transfer them into that hot frying pan. And I have put a little bit of butter into the frying pan. So right now my pierogi are just chilling on the bottom of the pot. I give them a little bit of a stir just to make sure they don't stick to the pot. Don't want them to stick to the bottom of the pot, so just give them a little bit of a stir so they kind of move around in the water. And I'm just going to wait for them to float to the surface. Got my medium hot frying pan heating up with a little bit of butter in it. I'm gonna get my sour cream out. And they're starting to float up. Ah, here they come, floating up to the top. So I'm just gonna grab as they float to the surface of the water. Now, here's the catch. If you put your pierogi into the boiling water and they immediately float, it just means you didn't get all the air out when you were filling them, in which case you wanna make sure to cook them for about 2 minutes. If you're cooking them from frozen, fully frozen, it's more like at least 3 minutes, but you can also still use the boiling technique or just the floating. If they float to the surface, they're usually ready to transfer into the hot frying pan, and they should sizzle when you transfer them into the hot frying pan. And once they're in the frying pan, they're going to cook for about 1 minute on each side.
How much butter did you put in the pan again?
It was about I used the stick, and I used the cold stick and just rubbed it around the pan, but probably about a tablespoon. So you want to make sure they get nice and crispy. And I usually wait to flip them before adding more pierogi into the boiling water. Because you don't want to have a backup. You don't want to have your pierogi floating in the boiling water, but you still have pierogies in your frying pan. So I usually wait until I flip my pierogi before I put new ones into the water, into the boiling water. I'm just rolling out my final little bit of dough here. Make a couple more of these babies. All right, I'm gonna give them a little tester and see how they flip. I want them to be crispy. They're still a little pale golden. I want it to be more golden brown. So I'm just gonna give it a little more time. All right, let's see how they're doing. I'm gonna turn my pan heat up a little bit. They're not quite as crispy as I want them. Oh, that looks good. This is what you want to see, this sort of nice, crispy, golden brown, speckled sear. And then I'll get my plate ready.
See, in the frying pan, it's just butter, right?
What?
Is in the frying pan, is it just butter?
Just butter.
Okay.
Oh yeah, now we're talking. Oh yeah. This is like the perfect one here. Really crispy and brown. Okay, so I like to put a nice smear of sour cream into my plate. And I'm pretty generous with it. Do like a swoosh, like this. And then I'm gonna put some more pierogi into my boiling water. I'm gonna keep it rolling because I'm cooking for my housemates tonight. Transfer my crispy pierogi onto my plate. Oh, they're beautiful. Oh, yeah. And then I'm going to top it with a little bit of the caramelized onions. So it looks like this. And then I finish with a little sprinkle of that dill that we set aside. For just a little garnish. And voila, we call it dinner. So I'm gonna wait until my second batch of pierogi are starting to boil to the top already. I'm gonna go ahead and butter up my pan. Give it a little fresh butter. Turn it down a little bit. And go ahead and transfer the boiling pierogi to the hot pan. Be careful, the pan, I'm using cast iron, it gets hot, it gets very hot. So I know that I need my pan to cool down a little bit. I don't want to burn my second round of pierogi. I'm going to go ahead and just taste one now. Make sure that we didn't mess it up. Oh yeah. It worked. We did it. Please let me know how your pierogies are progressing. Oh. All right, I see some finished ones over there. Emily, how do they look?
They look amazing.
Yes. Yeah, and don't forget to take some pictures. And if you guys follow the cooking school on Instagram, you can tag me. That would be amazing.
Okay, well, I'm going to not take a picture of the one I just took half a bite of, but I will put a good one later.
I'm getting sweaty now. My kitchen is very hot with the pierogi frying away. Anybody else have a finished pierogi?
Almost.
All
The
right.
caraway is so good in it.
Oh, I'm so glad. I really like it.
It's not
too.
my favorite, but it's so good in this.
Yeah, it just makes sense. Kathleen, are you going to eat some? Or are you going to wait until a reasonable hour? Are you eating them now?
I'm definitely making some tasters to have tonight.
Good.
A couple of each, and then the rest I'm freezing. So I just finished my squash ones, and now my potato ones are in the pan.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to spotlight Melissa's are looking so beautiful. Check those out. Oh yeah, gorgeous. Gorgeous.
I underestimated how long they would take to brown. So I think I need to turn my pan up because the next batch was like floating away at the top and I had no place to put them.
I know, yeah, you got to get in the rhythm of it. It happens. Beautiful. Nice. Ken and Chris have some finished ones. Let's check it out. Looking good. Yeah, feel free to show off, you guys. I would love to see you show off. It would make me very happy.
Mine are little, but there's a lot of them, which is exciting because I feel like I can eat a lot of them.
Gracie, you're muted.
Woo!
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, babe.
Ours.
I'm eating one and it's burning my mouth and I love it.
Yay! Well, you guys, we made it to 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. This is the end of the class. I just want to check in with you guys. I'm going to be hanging out here, tidying up my kitchen, finishing cooking my final pierogi. But if anybody has any questions they want to ask about the pierogi, or we can just do a little cheers to everybody.
Yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you so
Good.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks all for coming to class.
Very good.
I loved having you all here and pierogi with you. And I will send out a little survey tonight. If you get a chance to fill it out, that's super helpful to me. And I really I'm very grateful to have people to cook with during these crazy times.
Me too.
Cheers to all of you.
I'm definitely entering the
Cheers.
raffle.
You're gonna enter the raffle?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
I also need to get that raccoon shirt for my daughter.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty cool.
It's so cool.
All right. Well, thank you all for being here and have a delicious night.
Thank you, Gracie.
Bye.
Thank you, Gracie. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Gracie. Got more hair. Hey.
Beautiful, Chris. They look great.